issue is that some of the architecture and design of our healthcare systems was done in 1950s and 60s. But India has evolved in the last 50, 60 years. Where the primary health centers were set up, they were equidistant at a point of time, equally accessible or inaccessible to everybody. But meanwhile, the road network has changed very dramatically. You have organically developed cities and towns. So what was happening is the PHC is somewhere and the road network is elsewhere. So if a person goes to a PHC, for some reason he doesn't get the service or the doctor is not there, he has to come back all the way and then go to the town. But he believes it makes sense for him to go to the town because not only will he get health care for himself or for his family, he can also do other things when he goes to the town and then maybe do some shopping or something like that and come back. This is one thing that nobody wants to talk about. The second thing is, compared to the population that we have versus the number of primary health centers that we require, that is one less. The third challenge that we have is the distribution of population, density of population in the primary health centers. To top all of these, it is believed, some of the reports say, almost 30 to 40% or sometimes 45% of the primary health centers do not have the necessary staff. Either they are not recruited or they are recruited but they don't attend the office. There is absenteeism. So this is one part of the challenge. The other challenge that we have is that in spite of having all these people, sometimes there are no supplies, like medicines are not there or consumables are not there. Even for those doctors who are very passionate and who are doing a great job in rural areas, they are not appropriately supported in some of this. These are some of the challenges that are there. Given these challenges, and especially it's much worse when we talk about tribal areas. There are two problems with the tribals. One is the access, especially the true primitive tribals, not the plain area tribals. For example, if you take Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand or Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, these people who live in jungles, their lifestyle has not changed for the last 4,000 to 5,000 years. Now, for them to access some of these is a challenge, and the traditional systems are destroyed. The new system there is no access to, and is expensive to access to. So all these things make it very complicated in terms of the challenges of primary care. While India has done tremendously well in tertiary care, we have some of the world-class hospitals and our teaching hospitals are very good. Our private hospitals are some fantastic hospitals are there. Some of them are better than other parts of the world, even from US. And I think they are also cheaper than US in many places. So while we have done a great job in terms of creating that, we were not able to solve our primary care problems. That has been a bugbear for us. Now, it is sad that even in 21st century, we see people dying of simple diseases like malaria or diarrhea and things of that kind. Apart from these, another challenge that has been happening in the last 10, 15 years that we see, which experts talk about, is the prevalence of non-communicable diseases, which is creating a bigger burden. Earlier, it was believed that hypertension, diabetes, things of that kind, or cardiovascular diseases were seen as urban diseases, rich man's diseases. But today we see hypertension and diabetes in rural areas. We did way back in 2007, 2008, almost screening of almost a large number of population in Andhra Pradesh. At that point of time, the combined state, and Telangana did not become a separate state. We found almost close to 1 million plus hypertensives and diabetics. These were undiscovered. Now, today it is expected that almost anywhere between 5 to 7% of the total population suffers from hypertension and diabetes. By 2020, they say India will be the diabetes capital of the world. And we know the challenge of diabetes. If it is not detected appropriately, if it's not, it is preventable. When you can't prevent, it is detected early. Once you detect it, refer it and manage it appropriately, then it does not lead to other kinds of complications like cardiovascular diseases, which will put a huge burden on a family. Today, if you notice, one critical catastrophic illness in one family can take them to poverty. A middle class suddenly can become poor. If the bread earner dies and the family becomes almost orphan, and the children have to go to a lower quality school, the quality of life comes down dramatically. So I think this is a huge burden that is there. Another interesting thing, statistic that people talk about, especially some specialists who talk about, is that close to 65 to 74% of the health expenditure is out of the pocket. Even in United States, I am told people don't spend more than 45 to 50%. Though it is supposed to be the mecca of markets and privatized kind of a healthcare and insurance, etc., government spends a significant amount of money in terms of primary care. So these are some of the gaps and challenges in the primary care space. I, I do not think there are any silver bullets to solve these problems. We know the solutions. The key challenge is in gaps in execution. Health is a concurrent subject. While the central government makes the laws and larger policies and has tremendous capability, the capability of state governments is varied. Some state governments are very advanced. Their governance is very advanced. The bureaucrats are very high quality. The politicians are highly committed. In some states, the politicians and bureaucrats may not have the same depth and capability of some states like that. I don't want to name the states, you know which are the states who are doing well. And some states are endowed very well with resources. Some states are not endowed with resources. So we can't allow, if India is like a family, we can't allow some of our brothers and sisters not do too well. Some may be not well educated, but in the family we always look after everybody. So if it's a joint family kind of a thing, if you think, it's important to look after that. So these are the variations. So there is no silver bullet, but one thing is for sure, we have to get as many people, as many partners to work closely with the government. Government, we believe, should take the mandate for primary care. All over the world, primary care, which has preventive care, which is an important thing, like sanitation. I'm very glad that the Prime Minister has taken Swachh Bharat. And with that, if we can reduce vector-borne diseases, and if we can give drinking water, clean drinking water to people, 60-70% of the problems in primary care are solved. Even in UK, in 1800s and 18th century and 19th century, when they had underground sewage, that solved the problem, most of the health problems. So we have not done it yet. After 60 years of independence, we have to do that. At least we've taken that problem today and we're solving it. But it can't be done alone by government alone. We as citizens, civil society to get involved, the CSR part of the private sector should get involved, and private sector's capability should get involved. For example, CSR does not mean checkbook charity. The private sector brings lot of managerial bandwidth and competence. Today, if Indian IT companies can provide IT for some of the best countries in the world, and Indian IT company and Indian manufacturing can provide some of the best products and components for the rest of world-class manufacturing can be done, why can't all that capability be available to the problems that we solve? Whether it is technology, whether it is management, whether it's business process, all of them can be combined. So I think we have to find a creative space where both private and public and civil society can talk to each other without distrust. Today we distrust each other. The government thinks private sector is all for money. Private sector thinks government, at least some part of the private sector thinks government is inefficient or is corrupt. And civil society thinks that both business and government are corrupt and they're evil. Now I think we have to stop this mutually incriminating, pointing fingers at each other. It's a collective problem. The society has it. We have to find some common agenda, common space, and work with each other and build trust. I think everybody should take the first step in engaging with each other, and we have done, for example, we work with governments, and working with governments is like managing a marriage. All the challenges that you have to trust as much, you have to work with them as much they will have to work with you. So this is the way I think we can solve the problems, because the solutions are not complicated. It's all about execution. I think primary care or health care, end of the day, it's all about execution. How do you deliver that execution problem is the key issue. And private sector knows, if a soft drink company can provide soft drink to the remotest of the village, why can't medicines go? Is a key question. So these, like that, if similarly a tea powder can go to some corner of Assam or some corner of Chhattisgarh or some tribal area, why can't other services go? So I think the capability is there in this country. What we require is commitment and partnerships. Very good question. I think the vulnerable sections are the ones which have no voice. They are not middle class, they don't know English, they don't live in cities, nobody talks about them, they can't talk about themselves. So especially tribals, primitive tribal groups. So therefore, I think in a family, like a mother looks after the most vulnerable child in the family, whether it is a sick child or a child who's not well educated, who's not as smart, or has a lot of capability but has some disability. But she looks after all the children equally. Especially a little more attention is given to that child. So I think government has to devise exclusive policies and put an eye on that and see how it's executed. One good thing that has happened in this country is we have special component plan. For tribals and Dalits, money, Supreme Court said whatever money is spent must be accounted for separately. But on the ground, what happens is something the government can take a much keener view of what's happening, and especially bring in partners if they don't have the mechanisms to deliver that, because country is too huge now. It's about 1.2 billion people. So I think there are partnerships which need to go, and government must take special care and spend on these people, because they are the most vulnerable. And very easily, what Mr. Modi talks, or Prime Minister Modi talks about, there's a neo middle class he talks about. People who come out of poverty into entering the bottom of the middle class, and little bit of healthcare problem, they'll go back into poverty. So I think therefore we need to focus on that if India were to see a large number of people move out of poverty and prosper as a country. Yes, I think PPP is the way to go, because to believe that any single party will solve all the humongous problems that this country faces is fooling oneself. I think everybody has got a stake in this challenge. The private sector should step in. Private sector should not only step in from the private sector which makes money in the healthcare, but private sector, especially organizations which have managerial capability and competence, should look at it as a not-for-profit or zero profit or very limited profit to solve this problem of primary care. We have proved it very well in ports and airports, especially in hard infrastructure. In soft infrastructure is what will define this country. A healthy population means healthy labor force. That means the next generation is there and business will prosper and well. And therefore, it's in our own, it's in our selfish interest, even for corporates and the government, to come together and work together. And I think we have to get the civil society also into the play. We have to engage all of them. There must be conversations there. We have to create very innovative models. For example, in PPPs, in large projects like, let's say, roads, where they don't become viable, so nobody wants to put money there, because it takes them 15 years to make money if you want to collect the toll. So the government has come up with the concept of viability gap funding. So there should be something equivalent to that here. And second is, government should appropriately trust private people, challenge them if they don't deliver on outcomes. So it should be a very outcome-based engagement where we look at deliverables, and then, and which private sector understands the service level agreements, understands, because they do deliver to global clients all over the world. So that understanding capability is there. But how do we deploy that capability for our own people is an important element, and I think there are few irritants. For example, in terms of the flow of capital, flow of money, the road development stopped because many of people felt there is no money in it. Many private sector said that we don't want to do roads now. So the government is thinking, and how do I make it a little more profitable and interesting for private sector? So we should also look at large not-for-profit organizations like ours, and some people who have done in emergency management, which I was also involved. The key issue is, it is possible to create these entities, special purpose vehicles like ours, which can work with the government, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder, and take some of the burden away. I think the private sector should stop distrusting government, and government should stop distrusting private sector. We have to work together, and as partners, there will always be challenges and issues, like any relationship, like a marriage. There will always be problem, misunderstandings, but people talk it out, and we have to sort it out, and that is the only way to go, is what I think. I think it's a very promising technology. One of the challenges is that we overhype something and kill it. Like we say, you call a dog mad and shoot it. One of the problems with information and communication technology, I worked 2 decades in ICT industry, there's a tendency to overhype everything, as if this is the silver bullet, is going to solve all problems. Every 5 years, 10 years, we come up with a new concept and say this is going to solve and change it. For example, we said e-learning will solve all learning problems. Now, I think the reality is somewhere between the prince and the pig. It's neither useless, nor is it going to solve all the problems. It's not a magic wand. Technology has a major role to play. It is evolving now. We have very successfully deployed telemedicine with additional other solutions. It's a hybrid model. In itself, telemedicine may not be able to do. Pure play telemedicine by itself is a fantasy. I think it has to be plugged in with other things. I was just talking in the conference a little while ago. Primarily, the focus is, how do you build a solution? Let me give an example. In the tribal area in Andhra Pradesh, in Visakhapatnam district, Araku Valley, we set up a telemedicine center. Beyond that, you don't get bandwidth. And we have motorcycle-borne paramedics who go to the villages, identify these women, pregnant women, screen them, give them medicines if they have to, and especially if they have to come for a checkup, for antenatal checkup, they are told a jeep will come to pick you up. And many places the motorcycle also won't go. These people have to walk 2 kilometers to 10 kilometers. These women also walk back. They walk down to nearest place where the jeep can come. We send a 4x4, they come in the jeep, come to our center. There we have a paramedic and a basic MBBS who will engage with them. If they need to be consulted with a specialist, in Hyderabad we have a specialist. On a telemedicine mode, he talks to this or she talks to this patient, the OB-GYN specialist will talk to this patient and advise the doctor, younger doctor, what needs to be done. And after that, the person is given medicines and advice is given, and the person is given lunch and sent away. So now here you see, telemedicine is coming up to the Araku Valley, and people are living beyond Araku Valley, where even motorcycles can't go. So the issue is, how do you stitch all of these things together as a solution? So there are different pieces of the thing. No single piece works. If you need a shirt, you need buttons for it. You need a zip or something. You need a collar for it. You need all. See, multiple pieces will make something useful. So that is what I think is important. So telemedicine is a very promising technology, especially in urban areas in future, where bandwidth is easily available and commuting becomes difficult. To go to a doctor takes an hour, wait for the doctor takes an hour, and you talk to the doctor for only 10 minutes. So spending 2 hours or 3 hours just to spend 10 minutes doesn't make sense. So what we're saying is that a patient has to spend 2.5 to 3 hours just for a half an hour consultation. And if that does not require for the doctor to touch the patient and then look at something, some of these parameters can be picked up at home. Today we have BP apparatus at home, small cost. So urban India definitely can leverage telemedicine as we go further, especially for acute minor ailments like cough, cold, fever and things of that kind. But for even in rural areas, we can do that. Especially it's beautifully used, and we have used it for bringing specialists where there are no specialists and no specialist wants to go to a rural area. And that we can easily solve the problem. And because the beauty is, the doctor doesn't have to come to my office. I can pick him up from wherever. It's just a signal. You pick up a camera, and or you can go to the internet, or you can use a laptop, or you can use a tablet. And so the beauty is like ATMs today. Anytime doctor, anytime patient, we can do that, or anywhere patient. There's a distinct possibility today with telemedicine, especially for some parts. It may not solve all the problems. I don't want to talk about the fantasies where you are doing remote surgeries, where the surgeon is in America and the equipment is in India and the surgery is happening. These are all fantastic, great stuff. But these are very, very small, 1%, 2% or less than 1% you need. But most of the time people are suffering from acute minor ailments and problems which probably not attended to may become a crisis. Loose motions can become a dehydration, cold can get into a pneumonia, and for that you need some interventions. But otherwise, so I think it's a great promising technology, but we have to wait and watch and see what are the other peripheral support systems. Those costs have to come down. See, it has to come at the individual level. Urban areas it's possible, middle class, upper middle class is possible. But rural areas, I think it has to be a stitched solution like I talked about. And especially it will help in terms of reducing or the challenge or managing the challenge of the less number of specialists that we have. That can be sorted out. Yeah, I was talking about public-private partnerships. For example, at Piramal Swasthya, we have been working with government for the last 8 years now. And we have learned how to work with the government. As much as some of the governments that we work with, they have learned how to work with private partners. There are challenges still. Sometimes there are issues of payments, issues of money coming time, etc. But these are like any other business that you have. Any business engagement, you have those kinds of challenges, issues. But I think what it requires, PPP would mean patience, perseverance and persistence. And if you put all the 3 P's together, it is possible to work with governments. And we work with the government of Karnataka, government of Rajasthan, government of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Assam, and we worked with the government of Andhra earlier. So I don't see any reason why PPPs can't work. PPPs can work. The problem is people don't have the patience. They don't have the persistence. And there has to be give and take. Sometimes you have to take a step back. But still there is a lot more scope where government can do in terms of making it easier. Like today we are talking about how do we make business to be done easier in the country. The index that we are talking about, how easy is it to business with India, kind of, how easy to do business with a particular state. Similarly, how easy is it to do business for the public good is an important aspect that must be explored with, and there must be a dialogue. And I think institutions like yours must create a small platforms or an event where you invite the bureaucrats, the politicians, and some people like us and other organizations, where we honestly sit down and discuss, frankly talk about the misgivings that are there, and then come up with something. End of the day, collectively, if you can solve a problem, if you don't solve it, it's a crime. And I think India should not wait another 60 years to improve its number. I think it can be done in our lifetimes. In the next 5-10 years, we can transform this. It doesn't know rocket science. We have the money. We have the capability. What is needed is intent, partnerships, and persistence. We should be able to solve this problem.